I'm just gonna launch right into it. Yay! I'm glad you can see me. Yeah, I was saying earlier that it's been such a week of starts and stops. Like running out of heating fuel. Whoop, point this way. Running out of heating fuel and then having like an amazing donation of $1,100 for that purpose and to put some funds towards the farm, which I did. And then what else happened? Like, troubleshooting the fence. Like I got the fence online, but then it wasn't strong enough to keep the lambs from putting their heads through the fence. So then I had to go back to the drawing board and figure out what is going on with the fence. And I finally got it working today. I'm like really happy with it right now. And I think I know what to do going forward so that I don't have those issues anymore. Yay me. But it takes a while to like work through the problem and I get frustrated, but I'm like a dog with a bone. So speaking of dogs, excuse me. It's been a long day. My Mother's Day has been kind of cattywampus. Braytech says that technically today is not Mother's Day because the gift he bought for me isn't coming until tomorrow. So tomorrow is going to be Mother's Day. I'm like, okay, well, if that's the case, the one thing I wanted to do today was to dig up my perennial flowers. And I had to do other things before I could get to that. And then I decided like put some effort into this bed in the garden where they're going. So I added some soil amendments. So I did all of this bed preparation. Um, and I didn't get to actually digging up my flowers. So I'm like, okay, I'll take a do-over and dig them up tomorrow, on Braytech's Mother's Day. Okay. So thank you everybody for joining me on this cattywampus Mother's Day. If you would like to comment in the chat about where you're viewing from, or if you have any questions while I'm reading, I will visit those at the end. But right now I'm going to read you my farm update for this weekend called "I Planted Murphy in the Garden." It's been a pretty tough week. Like on top of like all of the starts and stop business, there was like losing Murphy. So that's pretty tough. I planted Murphy in the garden on burying a good dog and how a farm absorbs the loss. And again, I apologize. I'm holding the phone in my hand while I'm trying to read the article because my tripod is out in the garden. So bear with me. We sat on the low couch in a quiet room at the back of the Carabasset Veterinary Center eating Cape Cod salt and vinegar chips and chocolate from Madagascar. He rested his muzzle on my thigh, and I kept stroking the soft place behind his ear, the one he always leaned into when he wanted reassurance. Somehow I managed to hold it together for him as I said my goodbyes to James Murphy, my best friend and constant companion these past 11 years. Murphy loved chips. Cape Cod salt and vinegar were my favorites and his too. So I brought a bag along to share. The chocolate came from my sister. She'd come up the day before to say her goodbyes, and she believes every dog should get to eat chocolate at least once in his life. So that's what we did. We had ourselves a little picnic and ate chips and chocolate while the vet got everything ready. In case you missed it for this week, were a link to my office hours from Monday, May the 4th. The "We Didn't Lose Those Skills, They Were Taken" essay I published on Wednesday, and a bonus essay I wrote about my conservation contract called "The Promise That Outlasts Me." And those links are in the text version of this post. Saying goodbye. Murphy came into my life in 2015, not long after my daddy's passing and the ending of my 15-year marriage. It was an extremely unsettled phase of my existence, and Murphy seemed like an angel heaven sent to watch over me. That might sound corny, but the circumstances surrounding our union are too significant for this farmer to dismiss. A devout proponent of the adopt, don't shop concept, I'd brought him home through a special Black Friday event at our local Franklin County animal shelter. Zappos.com and Best Friends Animal Society had partnered to cover every adoption fee at shelters across the country. I waited in line for 2 hours that day, even though I had to pee so bad I thought I would burst. You can read the whole story in the Runamuck archives, and there's a link in the text version of this post. He was barely a year old when he came to me, already well trained, the kind of dog who'd push his head under your hand without being asked, who heeled because it was natural to do. We trained him to chase the foxes away from the chicken coop, and he did so with gusto, dutiful and noble, the way his breed is built to be. And I still avoided thinking about the end. I see it now in the slow progression of these last few years. The young dog who'd lay at the edge of the garden for hours became the older dog who preferred the comfy couch in the living room to the black flies tormenting a black coat in summer sun. He stopped trailing after his ambitious human and started waiting for her to come back inside. Rain or cold, snow or oppressive heat, he wanted the creature comforts now and none of the rest. And I wrote about him going downhill in February, and there is a link to the post Holding On for Spring in the text version of this article, essay, blog post. Over the weekend, it became painfully apparent that his time had come. Unable to get up on his own steam and unsteady on his feet, his appetite waned, though he did a respectable job with the lamb shanks and the mashed potatoes I had given him the night before. The degenerative muscle disease had degraded his body so that his hip bones and his skull were alarmingly prominent, his eyes sunken into the bones on his face. It was obvious that he was just miserable. Reluctantly, I made the call on Monday morning. The vet agreed there was nothing more we could do, and we scheduled it for Wednesday morning. Then on Tuesday, he scared me when he didn't come when I called. Knowing he enjoyed a midday dip in the pond, I went looking for him, dreading what I'd find. Sure enough, he'd fallen over in the water and couldn't get himself up again. Murphy was lucky he didn't drown right there. I had quite a time heaving him out of the pond and back to the house, and when I finally got him in the house, both of us were soaked through and shaking. I knew I'd been right to make the call. Yeah, he was covered with sludge from the pond, and it stank. It was great. But he lay there on the couch at the end, muzzle on my thigh, contented in a cozy cuddle with his person. I stroked his fur and told him what a good boy he was and that I loved him. And then it was over. Planting Murphy. The rain picked up as I dug the deep, oblong hole at the back of the garden, right beside the nannyberry tree I'd relocated there. In that moment, it seemed as though the whole world grieved for James Murphy, and I choked back a sob. My sister came to help me through the task. I almost think it was harder for her than for me. You see enough death on the farm that it's not such a shock to the system anymore, more a simple part of life. I think our society has shielded most of us from death. With the rise of modern cremations, we no longer have to deal with the remains of the mortal body. Hell, there's even an option on the release form at the vets to not be present as your pet is euthanized. So you can take your living pet in, let someone else handle the dirty part, and then 2 weeks later you get the ashes in an urn or a box, or whatever it is. It's the same with our elderly relatives. We've come so far that we can incarcerate our failing elders in a nursing home, pay others to look after them in their decline, and when they're gone, they're buried or cremated, and you never even have to look at the dead body. And I don't know if that's good or bad, but I know we once had great rituals around death, like Samhain or the Day of the Dead. What about the wake in the parlor where the body lay for 3 days while the family came through? Treating death so casually, so hands-off and outsourced isn't the advancement we tell ourselves it is. Personally, I think it belittles the recently dead and dishonors their existence. So I scooped up Murphy's lifeless form in my arms and I hefted him against my chest. At 60 pounds or more, it was a feat for me to carry him the length of the garden, and I puffed as my arms trembled. But I refused to move him any other way. Gently, I lowered him into the hole I'd dug and arranged his legs and head neatly. And then we covered him over with soil. I'd effectively planted Murphy in the garden. His body will feed the soil and nurture the nannyberry tree. Now he can always be with me, and the flies won't bother him at all. Happenings on the farm. You know as well as I do that life goes on even as we bury our loved ones. Here's what else has been happening on the farm this week: donations and new paid subscribers. On Monday morning, I woke to the sound I'd been dreading these last couple weeks, the furnace whining because it was out of fuel again. Mercifully, between several new paid subscribers, a handful of farm shares purchased, and generous donations from readers, including an $1,100 contribution to the farm, I was able to order a delivery of fuel for this coming Monday. I've also received gifts from Runamuck's Amazon wish list: 3 varieties of mushroom spores, a copy of Aldo Leopold's The Farmer as a Conservationist, and T-post hinges. I'm sure I'm overlooking something, and if I am, please forgive me. But to everybody who has sent such generosity my way, I thank you. The fuel is ordered because of you, and that is not a small thing. And I was also able to order some more landscape fabric, and I purchased seed potatoes. So it's been put to good use. Planting underway. Planting is underway in earnest now. As fast as I can prepare beds, I'm filling them, and so far I've put in onions, scallions, lettuce, broccoli, carrots, rainbow radishes because, obviously, lettuce mix and mesclun mix. Early in the season like this is also a good time for what I call structural projects in the garden: relocating trellises, moving cold frames, and adding a privacy hedge along the north side where my neighbors in the garage are. Thanks to a recent influx of support, I was also able to pick up a couple, like I said, I guess I'm repeating myself. I was able to pick up a couple more rolls of landscape fabric and another swath of plastic, which will help me manage the space and keep weed pressure down through the summer. I also bought seed potatoes, and cover crop seed. Sheep in transition. The greening is my absolute favorite time of year, when the yellow-green blush of new leaves begins to spread across the hills and mountains of my home here in Western Maine. The fields and the valleys become green and lush, and the forsythia signals the advent of warmer days ahead. It also means every time I went out to the garden this past week, the sheep were crying at me to let them at the grass outside their winter pens. Once I start the process, we'll be in the thick of rotational grazing until November. And knowing the state of the sheep's summer shelters, I'd hoped to hold off on the transition for another week or two. But they became quite obnoxious in their insistence, as sheep are wont to do, and there would be no peace in the garden until they could get at the grass. So on Tuesday, I made it happen. What's a sheep tractor? Most people hear tractor and they're thinking of an actual tractor, but you might at least be acquainted with the idea of a chicken tractor, the kind of livestock shelter designed to be movable for the purpose of rotational grazing. That's what I'm talking about. When I first began raising sheep, I built a little salt box style 3-sided shed on skids for my ewes and lambs. The rams have had this repurposed truck cap to keep them out of the wind and elements. I moved both with a heavy duty utility dolly and a lot of lady power. It's been 7 years, and these structures have been used and abused mercilessly, both by the sheep and myself. The plywood roofing on the salt box is rotted and sagging, and the boys have broken most of the fiberglass windows on their truck cap. My plan is to replace the roof on the older shed and give it to the boys, and then build a new salt box for the ewes and lambs, and retire the truck cap altogether. For the last 7 years, the flock has been the heart of our efforts to improve the soil and forage on the 10-acre field here, and to make better habitat for the wildlife who live there and thereabouts. They graze it down, fertilize it as they go, and the field gets healthier every season because of these sheep. Keeping them in a decent shelter is just part of being a responsible livestock keeper. That's my personal belief. Like, this is just part of the work. Lumber prices being what they are, I'm looking at about $500 in materials to do the rebuild right. So if you've got a few dollars to throw at a sheep shelter this spring, you can help by making a one-time donation through PayPal or Venmo. And the links are in the text version of this post if you are so inclined. I've also included pictures of what the shelters looked like when I first built them, as well as what they look like right now. So check that out. The weekly poll for this week is, what's your favorite chip flavor in honor of my boy Murphy? The options are barbecue, salt and vinegar, sour cream and onion, cheddar cheese flavored, or ranch. Last week's poll results, and that would be from 2 weeks ago, with the question about picking your homesteading nemesis. 50% of respondents said that deer and critters are their homesteading nemesis, me, while 25% credit their own optimistic timeline. Rocks in the soil and the weather each got 13% of the vote, and the missing tools got 0 votes. So I guess that's just a me thing. The season rolls on. For anybody who joined me late, if you wanted to leave a comment about where you're viewing from, that's always fun to do. And if you have any questions while I'm reading, you can leave them in the chat, and I will take a look at all of that at the end. So the season rolls on. I've been working at the back of the garden these last couple days, prepping beds for my direct composting experiment and cover cropping. Being so near the nanny berry, I can't help thinking about Murphy all tucked in under the mound of disturbed soil in the back corner. That particular tree was originally planted 2 years ago, and I just moved it to the back of the garden this spring to keep it out of the path of the sheep. A shrubby tree like that draws in birds, and the birds help keep pest pressure down in the garden. It's a long-standing tradition of mine to honor my loved ones through the farm. Several sheep have been named after late relatives. I had a Lucy, a Helen after my favorite aunts who passed away a few years ago. We had a Wally one year or a couple years. My father's middle name was Walter, and so we had a Wally. There were a couple others. A couple of cats are buried at the foot of different apple trees. I don't know if you know this, but apple trees like the minerals in our bones, and so that's why you see a lot of them in the graveyards, because apple trees really they like that, so they do well. So I've put a lot of my pets at the foot of apple trees here, and now Murphy's mortal remains are feeding the nanny berry, which will grow and bear fruit. Sorry. The birds will come for the berries in late summer, and my best friend will continue on. Meanwhile, the season rolls on, onions and lettuce in the ground, sheep on the grass, and a new sheep tractor to build before the full rotation can really begin. The farm doesn't care that I buried my dog on a Wednesday. It needs me on Thursday and Friday and every day after. I used to think that was harsh. Like when I lost my dad, my aunts, I think it was really hard to see that the world would just carry on while my own life was crashing down around me. But now I see it as a mercy. It's the work that carries you through, at least for me anyway. So I'll keep planting and moving my sheep. I'll keep an eye on that nanny berry tree, and I'll revel in Murphy's presence. Having him close like that in the garden makes it feel like he's still with me, watching over me the way he always has. So until next week, farm friends, I'm sending you love and good juju. So, I haven't had to do the chat thing on my phone before, which is why I usually try to use my laptop. So I'm gonna look through what you got here and just say hi to Life Learner and Rebecca, of course, and Sarah and Mark's Burning Bridge and Vicky. Thank you guys for being here with me and bearing with me while I dealt with these technical difficulties today. Garden Dude and Confused Dayton. Oh, you're back again. I recognize your name from earlier. It's been a day. Did anybody have any questions? Go ahead and leave them in the chat now, and I'll just ramble a minute. And then we'll go on our merry way. So, yeah, so I didn't get my perennials moved, but because I get a do-over Mother's Day, I'm going to do it tomorrow. And like my lupins have spread enormously. I'm pretty excited about that. And I have a couple of well-established purple cone flowers. And I don't remember what the name of it's called, but it's like the succulent that has the yellow flower things. I have one of those in there. And I'm going to dig those up and move them into this bed inside my fencing, so the deer can't get at them. And happy Mother's Day, Rebecca. You're absolutely right. Happy Mother's Day to everybody who's celebrating Mother's Day today, but apparently that's not me because Braytex says I can't celebrate it till the gift he bought me comes in. So hopefully that also means he cooks me dinner. So, all right. Well, I appreciate Rebecca says life going on is a tribute, not a rebuke. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. The respect to our well, Mark's in how do you say that, Mark? La Cruces, New Mexico. I probably butchered it, but you're in New Mexico. That's cool. And we are casual about death. We are casual about life to our peril. Yeah, that's right. Thank you, Rebecca. Well, typical boy logic, absolutely. Whatever I get a second Mother's Day, I'm going to take it. All right, guys. Well, I thank you for tuning in. A couple of events coming up this week. I am going live with Liz Reitzig, Raw Milk Mama on, let me check my calendar here, Tuesday at 12:30. And then I have a bunch of these. I'm getting brave. Look at me. On Thursday with Deb of the Night Shift Writing. The Black Sheep Homestead at 12:30 again with Deb. And we're going to talk about, well, Liz and I are going to talk about women's work and potentially something about the Farm Bill. And then Deb and I are going to talk about pest management in the garden. She says she has a lot of trouble with raccoons. So we're just going to talk about our pest predator woes and potential strategies. We're just going to troubleshoot. So I hope you will tune in for those and I will see you soon. Yay. Thanks. Thanks for being here. I appreciate you. You figure out how to get out of this now. Maybe like that. Nope, not like that.